I'm thinking about this thing about knowledge, specifically in relation to a video that Ex-Omniverse put up about knowledge and its relationship to intuition and kind of emotional connection, I guess. And specifically drawing on I think it was Plato, he said, defining knowledge as justified true belief, which is great. It's really great. I mean, the first thing I would say is that obviously a lot of it's just about defining terms, and my own definition of knowledge is one in which there has to be a person involved. It would take too long to define why I'm coming to that conclusion, but yeah, for me knowledge has to be embodied in some way. Knowledge can't live in books or in databases. But as I say, that's just a nomenclature thing, and in a sense it doesn't really matter. But this thing about justified true belief, I mean, there's a couple of relationships I have to those terms, and I'm just going to see if I can find a way in through two doors, really. One by talking about truth, and the second by talking about belief, although I think I'll probably collapse them halfway through. The thing about truth is really interesting, because from my understanding there's kind of two dominant theories about what truth consists of, what are called correspondence theories and coherence theories. Correspondence theory of truth means that a proposition is true if it corresponds to some event or some phenomena in the physical world. So if I make a proposition like there is a black dog here, and there is a black dog here, yes, so I've made the proposition, there's the dog in the real world, therefore the proposition is true. So that kind of correspondence theory of truth places, well, there's several things about it, but it's it's about that relationship between either not just a verbalized proposition, but an internal state, something that I think, and then some event outside in the world, in that kind of weirdly dualist way. But so that's correspondence theory. The other is the coherence theory of truth. It's a bit more problematic to explain, actually. I'll try and find a couple of examples. Probably the simplest example is from a system like mathematics, because what the coherence theory of truth suggests is that a proposition is true if it makes coherent sense within the system that it belongs. So if I make a statement in mathematics like 2 plus 2 equals 4, that statement is true, not because it corresponds to some internal state, although it might, but that statement is true if within the system of mathematics it makes coherent sense. So if I was to find any equation that's got the number 4 in it, and I was to take that number 4 out and substitute it with the characters 2 plus 2, and then solve the equation, if the result is the same in every case where I've taken number 4 out and put 2 plus 2 in, if the result is the same, then I can say 2 plus 2 equals 4, because they're equivalent within that system. It makes coherent sense within the system, therefore the statement is true. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And it's true not because I say so, and not because I have some kind of weird mental state that believes it, but because the system of mathematics which produces those symbols, those characters, those relationships, is a system of coherence in which 2 plus 2 does equal 4. Let me just see if I can find another example for coherence. Okay, if I point to someone and say, this man is my brother-in-law, obviously there's no man here, but if I was to point to a man and say, this man is my brother-in-law, that proposition would make sense if and only if that man was married to my sister. Yeah? Because there is a system to do with family relationships, to do with things we call brothers and sisters, siblings, to do with the institution we call marriage, to do with the various names for those formations. And that's a coherent system. And so that statement, that proposition I made, this man is my brother-in-law, is true only if it's coherent within that system of relationships, i.e. that he's married to my sister. It isn't true dependent upon my internal state. In fact, my internal state, my belief, or if you like, or any kind of cognitive relationship I have to that statement is irrelevant in terms of its truth value. I can firmly believe that this man is my brother-in-law. But if it turns out that my sister is not married to this man, or he's a bigamist, or they didn't really get married, they're just kind of living together, or whatever, or it's a case of mistaken identity and it's his twin brother, regardless of how firm my belief, if that statement doesn't fit within the coherent system of family relationships, then it's not true. Okay. Whew, that took a long time. Okay, I suppose what I'm saying there is that the correspondence theory of truth, which does talk about the relationship between my internal state as expressed through my proposition, there is a black dog in this field, that correspondence theory of truth demands a person. It demands that the knowledge which falls out of that proposition, the knowledge that falls out of that truth, demands that there be a person involved. There has to be an internal state for me to have that this external fact or phenomenon must correspond to in order for a truth value to be proven. For coherence theories of truth, that's not the case. A proposition is true in coherence theories regardless of whether a person believes them or not, accepts them or not, or is even in their presence or not. You can be completely ignorant of a fact and it still be true. In fact, everybody can be ignorant of a fact. The fact could be completely unknown, but still be true, because it fits within the coherent system. In fact, that's, in a sense, that's what the whole project of science is about. It's about finding coherent truths in a world which is impersonal, which doesn't demand a personal relationship to them. Not sure I've really got to belief, really. Yeah, I suppose. Just to return to knowledge in that. So in a sense, there's two kinds of knowledge, I would say, falling out of that. There is knowledge which is personal. It's the stuff that has a correspondence theory, which corresponds to some internal state of mind. And then there is knowledge which is impersonal, which exists just within coherent systems. Personally, I would not refer to the second of those as knowledge, because, as I said at the top end, I think knowledge, I choose to use a definition of knowledge which requires it to be embodied in some way and internalised in some way, but I know some people don't. Personally, I would refer to knowledge that exists within coherence structures of truth as something like information or data. I would choose to make that kind of linguistic separation. Just in terms of this belief thing, because I think this is quite important. Clearly there are mental, cognitive states corresponding to belief. Robert Burton talks a lot about this, and I made a whole bunch of videos about the feeling of believing something and how significant that is. But it seems like some of us are very wedded to kind of correspondence theories of knowledge and accepting that something is knowledge that is known, accepting something as a known fact, only if it fits within correspondence theories and we feel the truth of it. Other people, perhaps, and I think I would include myself in this, don't really require, don't require as much the feeling of knowing something, the believing feeling that goes along with that kind of internalisation. I'm happy to believe something so I'm getting full of my language here. I'm happy to accept something is true, even if I don't believe it, simply because the evidence stacks up that way. And in fact, most scientific knowledge is like that. You can't experience it in any meaningful sense. You can't internalise it, and you can't get the great feeling of meaning if you're looking at quantum theory or something. You have to look at how well the facts as presented, the data, the information, coheres within the system as a whole, establishes its truth value through that coherence, and therefore justifies an acceptance of it as knowledge, even though you are incapable or unwilling or unable to have the feeling which corresponds to that. I don't think I made a lot of sense there, actually. Anyway, I'm sorry if this is a crappy video, by the way. I'm shooting this on my camera phone because either the internet's crap or YouTube's crap or something else is crap, which means that the usual camera I use, which is like a flip camera, which does high HD footage, it just takes so long to upload. It's been taking like 4 or 5 hours to upload videos recently. So I'm shooting this on this camera phone. Go on, pups.